So you've got a new album coming out on the 28th called Never Forget.
Yes.
I've had to listen to it, and my feeling is it's a very personal record for you, and also comprised of songs that you've kind of collected over the years. So maybe we can start by you giving us a little overview of all of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's personal, but I'm hoping the spin will be more than just something personal. That this spin resonates with humanity.
Right.
I'm not very optimistic that it's going to resonate the same way we might be maybe in a couple hundred years from now, when maybe when humanity has found the center between everybody. In other words, I find that, just to throw this in, and then I'll explain myself better, that
Sure.
that the blame for anything horrific things that happens, even though it could be some crazy man, a dictator, whatever it is, nobody can do shit without humanity. I mean, humanity is, so the blame is really on humanity, on the world, and how people buy propaganda.
Right.
Most people could not know how to handle things if they didn't rationalize some means of leaning on something to know that they have the truth, and the other stuff is bullshit. And so it goes on and on. But if everybody starts emphasizing on the commonality rather than how to appreciate the beauty of the difference between us,
Yep.
that's so silly. Did they get something straight? Is that our commonality is 99%. I don't care if you're white, black, or Aborigine, or Eskimo, or whatever.
Right.
It's insane to have to recognize the differences. It's totally sanity if you recognize how much commonality we have.
Yep.
And then you can appreciate the beauty about the differences, just like anything else. So in my personal experience, my mother and my Aunt Judy, her younger sister, were very fortunate to escape the killing camp, the death march. When the Nazis wanted to get rid of all the evidence, even with evidence, it's people that can't believe it actually happened, and the denial then to say it didn't happen is horrific.
It's got to be awful. Yeah. I mean,
And
that's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and my mother and my Aunt Judy both were few of the fortunate. When bombing started happening, then everybody freaked out. The soldiers, the Nazis, guards who were marching them all to the graves, and everybody split different ways. And my mom and my Aunt Judy, ran away, and they went through their journey of survival, and got to Denmark, liberated there.
Yep.
And then I met my mother, met my father. My father's first generation Danish. My grandparents on my father's side immigrated to Denmark. Excuse me. My grandparents on my father's side immigrated to Denmark, and they started a family. So my father was born in Denmark, and my four aunts, his four sisters, and my mom and my dad, they got married, and I'm born, and then what I have to say is that it didn't start with my mother getting liberated in Denmark, my Aunt Judy. It continues, it filters, it affects me, it'll affect for generations. Not even knowing it, I mean, to the extent that how significant it is for people to recognize. I mean, all other people in my generation who came out of a second generation of the Holocaust, and that people don't put attention on that, just how much it's carried over. And in my particular case, I'm a 73-year-old man, and when the COVID hit, and I'm sitting here by myself for almost 2 years now, I'm sitting there, and I must do this album. I've done compositions, as you say, at different times for different purposes, and then I must tell the story.
Right.
If I go to the grave, if I die, if I'm going to the grave, no, I'm dying, and as I consider myself a true artist, and I had not expressed those demons and things that has really occupied inside me. I don't share it with people. I was afraid of anti-Semitic. I'm scared of it. I grew up having that fear. So for me, to not express something that's that deep, how I would be ashamed of myself as an artist. So if I may just conclude that this part of the concept when I explain it is that I think there are two entities in society that serves a purpose with this, and two different ends of the rainbow. I think as an artist, we respond, I should say, to what goes on in the communities anywhere. That's really what the arts are, it's like a graffiti of life, and even to say to you that I try to share this with as many people as possible because hopefully people will get it, is that when I ask somebody, why should you support the arts? They say, oh, it makes people happy and that. If the arts are to be supported with the real money, I mean, really serious support and all that, I think you have to recognize the arts as a much more important value, a value that can bring a sense of reality to what community needs or is crying out for or what they want. And that can translate into what kind of products would would make a healthy product based on what is the community asking for. And so the arts is really much more than just making people happy or entertaining. It expresses what people are feeling and thinking, which is the monologue we want to understand. And then you have the politician on the other side. Well, on the true sense, as a politician, just like an artist, is really a beautiful thing because the politician, in a pure sense of it, puts the policies in place. So if the artist is expressing what's going on in the community and environment, then the politician will soak that stuff in and recognize what people are saying. Then you got to reorganize the organization of things, or the platforms, or whatever it is, and that's policies or regulation you put in place to serve everybody in harmony. So there's those two ends of the rainbow, and unfortunately, in the arts, a lot of arts are bubblegum stuff that's good. It makes people happy and all that. But there's a deep side that I feel I have a fiduciary responsibility. It's not just a personal thing.
Right.
As an artist, if I live as an artist in society and that's my occupation, I have a right not only to serve everybody else, but to be honest to myself. Right. Therefore, in what I feel, and the politicians, not the ones that, I'll fix it in 5 minutes and everybody votes for it, and somebody else will say, I'll fix it in 10 years, and people, forget it. I mean, if you want to be realistic about things, nothing just happens overnight.
Right.
And you got to brew and marinate things with the right feelings and emotions to express and to hopefully get the message across. So never forget when my mother was writing on scraps of paper over and over again. She couldn't believe that nobody believed it, and she was devastated all her life, which devastated, of course, me too, because she couldn't talk about it. And there was always this tension. I mean, the tension since a kid, everything was like an epic of trying to make it right. And so all that stress and nervous and erotic energy and all that, I left home not because my parents were wonderful then. I left home because I had to step away maybe and see the bigger picture.
Right.
And
you were like 18 years old when you moved from
I came to the United States.
To the States by yourself. That's insane.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to be in the music business, and I orchestrate things in my mind and I live for it, and
it's relatively a brave thing to do for a kid, basically, to just like.
Yeah. It's interesting. is that the word brave can maybe fit in, but a lot of people often, to me, mix up the word courage with ambition.
Right. Okay.
So I'm a very ambitious person, and that's what brought me.
Gotcha.
My mother and my Aunt Judy, I look at people that were in the killing camps. Every moment there was horrific things happening that they would witness. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
they didn't know you never knew who was going to be next, or what, if you got a job that day, or they're going to put you in a gas chamber or what.
Right.
So I would say that takes courage
Sure.
to among everything, not feeling you're defeated and still stay strong.
Right. Right. So you
that
mentioned Holocaust deniers and the political climate in the States now, with and a lot of that stuff has just kind of been brewing up in the last couple of years. Would this album have been made if those things hadn't happened?
Yeah, it still would have been, because my first solo album was called just Lee Oskar, and the themes there, I remember home. It was exactly about leaving home and about about those things.
Yeah.
And then also the third album, My Road, Our Road, and actually the composition My Road, I got my copyrights back finally.
Oh yeah.
So My Road, I re-recorded it, but that's the last piece on Never Forget album, because that
Right.
is exactly the portrait that I had meant to create initially as My Road, and that still stays strong as the image of what I wanted to be, end with as Never Forget.
Right. Because you wrote that back in what, like 81 or so, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it kind of ends with this big kind of crescendo. The strings are
Yeah,
swelling.
it's like it's the storm in survival. That's what it is.
I'm going to go back and forth between the past and the future and the present. I got to ask you what happened when you arrived in New York City and LA in, was it 68, 69 or whatever? What did it feel like for you? I mean, what were you thinking? What happened to you?
Well, when I first came to New York, it's the first time I ever been inside a hotel,
Right.
and the people who were going to sign me in that, which I always was scared to sign anything, so I didn't. But they
Right.
put me in a hotel. It was the Abbey Hotel in New York when we connected, and they would give me like $10 a day. And but they left for like 3 days, and I didn't have any money,
Right.
and I didn't eat for almost 3 days, and I didn't know what. So the maid, my English wasn't that good, but I was talking to the maid to see if I can borrow money or something,
Right.
and she said, all you have to do is sign. I did,
That's all right.
it'd be like having my dog and having all the food here, but don't know how to open a can of food, right?
Yep. So did you come with like a stash of harmonicas and that?
No, I had one harmonica to my name.
Right.
Yeah, it was. So I was very limited in even what I could play,
But before long, you were like recording with Eric Burden. So I mean, that's
well,
pretty
yeah. When I came,
impressive.
so if we go really fast forward, I mean,
Yeah.
after I came first just to San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury, because I heard it was easy to I got a ride to there with some people, and everybody wanted to be at Haight-Ashbury.
Sure.
And I figured that's very close to Los Angeles, where I wanted to end up for a
Right.
record deal. So I figured I can maybe crash there and get a play, and then hitchhike down. It's close. Well, I ended up in San Francisco for over a year, because I got arrested for public nuisance and loitering.
Welcome to the
And
States.
yeah, and then after they arrested me, well, that's not a whole long story. We don't get, but basically, I got bailed out by this. His name was, he introduced himself as Super Spade
Right.
in Haight-Ashbury, and I didn't know Spade is implied being black. I don't know,
Right.
I'm naive to all that.
Yep.
And he said, "Come with me," and I followed him. What happened is I was going to go into Tracy's Donut Shop. I was in love with American donuts, chocolate donuts.
Good on you.
And as I was about to walk in, this dude comes up to me, introduces himself, Super Spade. Come with me. After I told him I play harmonica, I'm Danish and whatever. So he says, he says, come with me. And I go down to the street of Haight and Ashbury, right in the corner there. There used to be a drugstore there.
Right.
I've become other things since then. But I walk to the back, and he holds up a bottle of Saccharin's. And I didn't know what it was. And he's explaining to me that this looks just like LSD or like Osley tablets or whatever it was.
Right.
So after he explains it, I head back to get my donut. He's telling me that these things he's going to sell to some people that burned his friends, like that sold him bunk stuff and that. So I go back to get my donut, and cops, hey you, and I turn around and they're talking to me, and they get out of the car and they check me out and they say, we told you to move 15 minutes ago. It wasn't me. I don't know what they were saying. They arrested me for public nuisance and loitering. The one cop named Arthur Garens, batch number 624. I will never forget that. He was arguing with the other cop in what to arrest me under. So because it turned out that they had been arresting a lot of kids under the 370 penal code, which is public nuisance and loitering.
Right.
They arrested everybody on the same, all these kids with long hair. So they were trying to figure out how to be creative, and I guess they couldn't, and they came up just. So long story short is I didn't know what to do. So I went to the Danish consulate, the American Civil Liberties Union, and because I went to a public defender first, I was told, and this lady knew nothing about my case, and how's she going to represent me? And so I was upset in court. I was yelling. Well, Judge Kennedy, the judge, he wasn't arresting for contemporary, even though they were saying he was very curious, because apparently all these kids were arrested and they were all pleaded guilty when I pleaded not guilty.
Right.
Because the parents, and they slap, and then
Yeah.
So when the judge says, well, you're going to have to get somebody, and so I went to get the Danish consulate, the American Civil Liberties Union, and another guy named Richard Withheim, I think his name was. But anyhow, there was 5 attorneys, because that was a classic case for them to show that the kids in Haight-Ashbury were being abused, because long hair and they get arrested just for being
Right.
Yep. So when they arrested me, what's important is when they arrested me, I forget. I'm telling the story so many times. I'm just jumping, and I shouldn't jump to it. When they arrested me, they said you had 3 phone calls to make, and that's when I got the yellow pages. I looked up Tracy's Donut Shop, and I called a number that's there, and this dude answers, and that was actually Super Spade. I said, "Do you know Super Spade?" He says, "Yeah, that's me."
Right.
So it turns out he's doing his drug deals from inside Tracy's Donut Shop on the public phone there.
Classic.
Right. And so I immediately told him who I was and where I'm in jail. He says, "I'll take care of you," whatever he said. Next morning, a bail bondsman came and bailed me out.
Right.
It was amazing. Then I went to Haight-Ashbury to look for him, and I couldn't find him. And then it turned out he was murdered, cut up in pieces.
Oh my
from
God.
a bad drug deal and that. Yeah. So that was what on the dark side of Haight-Ashbury. It wasn't Flower Charles. That was a very dark side.
There's always 2 sides to everything.
Yes.
Oh man. Now getting back to your record, because I do want to talk.
Yes, please.
The music, it's mostly instrumental. There's a lot of strings. There's obviously harmonica, and I'm feeling like I hear like kind of Eastern European things creeping in underneath, almost polka rhythms and things. So is that part of what you're doing with the music? With this, how do these?
Well, I mean, the motif of the music is from my roots, being Jewish.
Yep.
The motif of the music from the roots that I come from is very Eastern European in that, I mean, I'm not self-conscious about that stuff.
Yep.
But that's, so I'm very, I mean, that's big part of my DNA, I guess.
I notice, especially on Song from Mom, there seemed to be a little kind of.
A song for Mom, yeah, that's double harmonic minor. Actually, that and Never Forget, a double harmonic minor scale, and it's very. Once you get familiar with the melody, it's very contagious and very easy. But I think those modes sounds very strange to a lot of Western people initially, because of the way that the tonality works, you know. So, but even the first solo album I did, my first album I did, it's called Lee Oskar, it had all harmonic minor scales. I remember Home, the three movements. And typically people would hear, they would play drums or that would play double time. So, you see, that to me is not, that ain't soulful. What's soulful to me is when you're melodically phrasing, but everything is going half time, dum, 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 you know, half time, not double time.
Yep.
So that's the elements of funk or the elements of having grooves is not just an American. That's music anywhere. I mean,
Gotcha.
People walk and talk. I don't care where you're from. If there wasn't for airplanes, we still eat and shit and everything the same. But if there wasn't for airplanes, we would just be eating the food that grows domestically in wherever we are.
Right.
But we're very homogenized today because from planes, we can eat anything we want without even thinking about what do they grow in this area. You know, I want lobster, and you could be in the middle of the desert.
Yep.
Don't even think about it. So the world has gotten very small, and then in the digital world, even now it's extremely tiny. But back in those days, you know, when there was communication, would take a week just to send a newsreel about some propaganda that, you know, it wasn't in real time like CNN or anything like that. You know, I think people are exposed to many more things.
Right.
But think about this. Think about people that are not persecuted. A family can live for generations in the same town, for many generations. And if they think they know about the world, it would not be from experiencing anything. It would be from picking up the New York Times, even though they are in somewhere in the middle of Poland or somewhere. They can read a newspaper, they can go online and that. But they're really not experiencing things. In some cultures, for example, in the Jewish culture, where there's much persecution, I think what happens is, through time, it evolves through generations. When you have to bring up a family, move a whole family, I mean, that takes courage and a lot of things to do that. Yep. You can't just leave just because you feel, it's a nice place to move. I mean, it's got to be really bad.
Right.
Visiting is one thing, but to move a family and start there.
Yeah.
But part of the experience also, you get to experience other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And as you expose yourself to other cultures, you know, you get a different sense of humor. You get a different sense of how to merchandise. You get philosophy, science, everything. So in the Jewish culture, because there's been a lot of persecution, I think in my culture we have been exposed to so many different cultures that we in Survivor we become better at certain things than somebody who's been stalemate for generations in one little town. So I'm saying that because I hate the stereotype stuff that's saying, you know, Jews are very smart, but we can't trust them. You know, that kind of crazy stuff. I don't think, you know, as human beings, you can't put any race being smart in somebody else. This is, again, the outrageous stuff to me.
Right. I think there's basic human nature that groups of humans need to feel superior to other. For some,
that's it.
It's everywhere, you know.
Everywhere.
And of course, you know, that's only to make themselves feel good about themselves.
Exactly. So, you know, yeah. I know I talked.
So when you joined up with War with these guys, I mean, this is one of the funkiest bands that has ever been around.
Thank you.
And you're a guy from Denmark playing the harmonica. I mean, when you first met up with these guys, what did they think of you? What did you think of them?
Well, you're asking a good question because
I try.
Yeah, you are because because the problem again is people don't recognizing the commonalities,
Right.
and there's a lot of fear because of that. There wasn't any of that going on between me and the other guys. I mean,
Yep.
we were like, I didn't have any phobia, didn't have any phobia. We were just digging, playing with each other. And I was so excited to be part of a band. I was excited to meet Eric Burden.
Right. I'm sure.
I feel like now I'm finally get through the gate, and I'm going to make
Yeah.
it in my music business. I've been what's the word? That's been my whole goal. So when it came to Eric Burden and war and all that stuff, I did experience people out there in the audience, who are very influenced by being self-conscious about black and white and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a black dude say, "Hey man, you ain't no brother," like when they look
Right.
up close and all that, some silly stuff like that.
Yep.
Oh, whatever the stereotypes are, but all that stuff was never existed within the band. And I think because all the guys in the band grew up in areas like Southern California, like Compton, Long Beach.
Sure.
Papa D. Allen came from Delaware originally, so he was more like the Philly, Delaware competes for New York and jazz and all that,
Sure.
But rest of the guys grew up in Southern California, and in there you can walk in any neighborhood. There's the neighborhoods. There's guys playing Latin music. There's people playing Chicano music. There's people playing R&B, rhythm and blues. I mean, it's a multicultural lower middle class families, and so there's all kinds of music. So everybody was influenced like that. For me, I was just excited to be part of a band. And I always wanted to be part of a horn section. I always wanted to be a harmonica with saxophone.
Gotcha.
That was always a dream. And so Charles Miller, the sax player, he was a brilliant saxophone player, but he stooped down to my level because he, as himself, could appreciate maybe my heart and soul. I mean, the soul and the melodies that I come up with. I'm a melody maker. I come up with hook lines. So he would play the melodies with me, in unison or in harmony. That was basically what we did, and that was a big part of the sound of war.
Right. Definitely.
But yeah, I had no problem within ourselves. There's never been any kind of tension about black and white. I have to share one thing though. I'm sorry, but one thing.
No, go for it.
We're driving across the United States, and it's like a 4 or 5 day ride. Everybody was flying, but we all driving in the station wagon.
Right.
Me and Hale Brown are laying on the suitcase in the back of the station wagon facing backwards, reverse. We're sleeping on that. We're the two skinny guys. And and one of the guys in the band says to me, "Lee, you're Peckerwood." He was trying to make fun.
Yep.
And I didn't know what Peckerwood meant.
Right.
So I said, "Is that like a woodpecker, a bird? What are you talking about?" He says, "No, damn it, the peckerwood." So after I demanded him and somebody in the band explain what you're saying to me,
Right.
and that shut everybody up.
Right.
It took the fun out because they would have to explain instead of me reacting.
Yeah.
And I threw them nuts. They wanted to run out of the car because somebody fucking tell me what is a peckerwood.
Fantastic.
I mean, so we had fun like that, and I didn't.
Right. That's amazing. Now, getting back to the record, there's another track I wanted to talk about, "World for Peace."
Yes.
Does have a little bit of vocals. It's kind of a chant, and I don't know, is there a clarinet in there? Give me a little background on that one, if you
Yeah. So on "World for Peace," the melody I started had composed, and then I added more elements to it. I wanted that to be one of the epics in this story about, not the reality, but but the hope for a reality that there would be peace in this world. And I wanted to be like feeling, so thank you for recognizing as a chant, basically, or chants.
Yeah.
And I was first when I was painting this canvas, if you will, that's how I look at stuff. I wanted to include Native American chant in there. But when I went to look up things, even when I went to look up like about Native Americans, because there's a lot of commonality, as there's a lot of different horrific cultures, things that happen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, in different times, and right now as we speak, even. I just felt it would be amazing to have something Native American connecting with the Judaism and what happened there too, the persecutions. But it was when I looked up like headbands, anything, or just stuff like that, even for graphics, there's very little artifacts that's been preserved.
Oh, really?
You know, and it's the same with most cultures. I find that if we as Jewish people, we weren't persecuted as often as been for thousands of years, we wouldn't have been so united and say enough is enough, and then people are now organizing memorial Holocaust things. Those things are not done by Gentiles or anybody else. I don't see you don't have African Americans doing it for Native Americans. Everybody. We all just still so segregated. Yeah. In these horrific things that's happened. It has brought it closer. It's made it even more segregated. But it takes years, I guess, before people will like drive-by shooting Chicanos and that. What they could have. Got Ford and Chevy, big car manufacturers, to look at our neighborhood. Look at what these kids are doing. Yep. They're taking your junk and making clean machines. I mean, everybody has something great to connect with, rather than fighting each other. Try to it's just so. I think it's going to be a long time before various cultures will have their own message and show to human beings that what's happened to us too, because it's not just Jews, it's everybody. And until then, there's not much that exists to collect from. There's a headband and a Native American headband drawn with pretty thing by a young kid in Hollywood. That's not what I'm talking about. Right. So I couldn't and then the people that are protecting it, the Native Americans who are protecting it because of the things, they're so protected, they don't know me, so they would be very protective of not allowing me to engage in one of the chants to include it in, because they would be suspicious. But I went to I called my friends in Tel Aviv, and so I managed to get a beautiful spiritual singer that sings on there. That was, from the streets in Tel Aviv, and also an oud player. Oh, yeah. An oud player from Tel Aviv, and then the clarinet player is a friend of my friend in Israel. So I wanted some of those elements, and also my mother had written on notes over and over again, like as if putting her timeline, because she couldn't believe that people didn't believe it existed. So I found those notes and I had them translated from Yiddish into English, and it turns out. One of them was not even one of them says far away, dreams, like far away, just like my composition. Right. So I put that in there, translated. So I can go on and on, but it's basically, this chant is like the whole world coming together. And hopefully, and it's my mother at the end, because I was doing the ringtone business. Yeah. So I was recording my mother for a ringtone business. So I got that snippet, I found that one snippet. I want for peace for the world. Yeah. So I put that in there as part of it too. It's all
a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Eric Burden. Do you have any contact with him at all? When was the last time you saw?
Not much. Not really anymore. The last time I saw Eric was we were all on the blues cruise, the lowrider band, because I can't say war anymore.
Yeah. Right. It's insane.
And he was on there too, as Eric Burden and the Animals or whatever. And he was very aloof. It's strange. It's too bad. I mean, he was a big influence on me, Eric, you know, as far as I got through the gate and I got to be part of a band that Eric put together.
Yep.
And the reason why I was so exceptional, because even though I bullshit and said I know how to read and write back then,
Yep.
because that was my survival. People wouldn't accept me as a legit musician otherwise.
Right.
I had big ears and I love and I play. So my respect for Eric was that we would make up stuff every day. That's how we did it on stage, and that was natural for me. That was very natural. So it was a perfect fit.
Yeah. And it's a shame because, I mean, Spill the Wine has got to be one. I was about 14 when that came out.
Okay.
You know, and I bought it and I was like, what is this record? I mean, what the heck? Because I knew who Eric Burden was.
Right.
But it was like, this is another thing completely. So
Right.
surprised everybody that it became a hit, top 40.
And that's how hits sometimes have to happen, is that if you're great, if people expect me to be great and I get on stage and I play great, I'm just normal.
Right.
I'm just normal. But if I do something that was unexpected, the sensationalism is what people applaud. And I think with Eric, the fact that it was so odd, he was so well known, like Mick Jagger or anybody else, as a blues singer, and the Animals and all that, and he does this Latin thing with a rap, with a black band, and whatever images that people cast on it, it definitely was the unexpected, the sensationalism that certainly helps make a hit record, right?
Yeah. Now, being a harmonica player in the States, harmonica is usually associated with the blues. But my understanding is that that's not necessarily the case, especially in Denmark. It's fairly a normal thing to play the harmonica.
No, the world is so small today. Whether you're in New Zealand or in Denmark or United States, every kid, they watch the same shows basically, and all that. And I think harmonica has taken on a persona for the last 20 years of being. When you think of harmonica, you think of blues, and it doesn't matter. I think in New Zealand is the same as in Denmark, anywhere.
But when you were growing up, were you aware of like Little Walter or whoever?
No, not at all. When I got my first harmonica, I was 6 years old. That summer, an American came to visit my family and I. He obviously knew that harmonica was the in thing that summer.
Right.
So every kid had a harmonica, and when I got mine, I mean, I just stuck with it. And next year, it would have been a hula hoop, and I kept playing harmonica. And then next year was the yo-yo, but I kept playing harmonica. So, those are trends, and harmonica has survived more than just a trend, but it's really got a stigma when it's just think of blues. Right. And blues, by the way, the American blues is so contagious because playing in music terms, playing from a 1 chord to a 4 chord, or 1 chord to a 5 chord, or 1 chord to a 4/5 chord, those kinds of contrast. It doesn't matter where you're from, major or minor keys, anywhere in the world is very contagious. So it's become a very bourgeois, middle class kind of a thing, and I think everybody plays the same old poem, and I think the real entity of where the blues came from, and sometimes it's totally been missed.
Right. Okay.
Totally missed. I mean, it's some deep stuff. It's not the notes. It's the way the attitude is. It's the way the expression is. And blues is more than just a 1/4/5. I mean, what I do, like Never Forget, to me, that's blues. That's blues. I mean, blues is everywhere in the world. Wherever people are, there's the blues.
So do you see yourself performing any of this music
Yes.
live?
Yes, I do already perform some of them with the Lee Oskar and Friends band.
Oh, great.
But I'm now doing arrangements for a quartet instead of a symphony, so I can bring the quartet. I can have a quartet. Like March 11th, I'm playing the Triple Door here, and I just got that confirmed. So I'm going to introduce my arrangements with these compositions with a quartet, as well as the whole band, Lee Oskar and Friends.
Right. Very cool. And I see there's like a vinyl book version of it. And oh man, that's pretty cool. And you do all these acrylic art things as well. So
yeah, I paint also. So it's all my paintings.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. That's what you want.
These are all paintings. That's yeah. There's a lot of yeah.
Yep.
So this is a bigger version of what the CD is,
Yep. Yep.
and it has a certain technique, certain style of painting that I do in this particular series that I never did before. That it's just lots of dots of different colors, and then faces start coming out, and I kept saying, "Who are you?" It was like I felt like it was part of the journey in making this statement, is that there was almost like there was spirits, like people coming through.
Right. So that's very ambitious, and also it looks very expensive to make, because I know, it's tough to get stuff.
It was expensive, but I'm the same dude who, when I first got with Eric Burton, and we made very little money with some kind of a salary or whatever it was.
Right.
I didn't have a car. Everybody else had cars. I would hitchhike. I didn't have a car. I would spend my money on recording gear before a car. I was, to me, this is my love,
Right. Fantastic. All right. I have one more question for you about the past before we wrap this up. My understanding is that one of the Jimi Hendrix's last performance was with you guys, when he kind of got up and jammed with you like the day before he died. And I have to ask you what some kind of story behind that, because that sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, Eric Burton had the same manager, Mike Jeffries, that the Animals had.
And he was a piece of work too, from what I understand.
I mean, Jimi Hendrix had the same manager.
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix did, yeah.
As Eric. And so they had a common thing there, and they were communicating. And I was, with Eric, and I was staying up at his place on Briar where he was living in Laurel Canyon. And Jimi Hendrix was there, and Jimmy and him, I was basically a fly on the wall. Wherever Eric was, he would allow me to be. But I wasn't anybody known, so the attention wasn't on me. I didn't have to. But I was flying on the wall, and I would hear them talking about, it's up to you, Eric. Like Jimi Hendrix was, it's up to you, because he was giving up. Basically, he was saying, let's put a radio station on the moon or something so we can broadcast what we want, and blah blah, all this stuff. And a year later, so basically he was talking about, in my way of thinking, almost like suicide.
Right.
A year later, we were in London playing one of the first rock bands to play the Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club.
Right.
And Melody Maker magazine there, which I named one of my monikers after, because I thought it was such a cool name, Melody Maker.
Yep.
That newspaper had a front page, best live band ever heard. And so Ronnie Scott is known for hardcore jazz. Here we are, 3 days selling out, blah blah blah, and Hendrix happened to be in town, and he's staying with Monique, his girlfriend, German girlfriend there. And he comes by, of course, to say hi to us and that. And then he says he's going to come back next day, which he did, and play. The next day he was going to come back, and we get a call. Terry McVeigh, a roadie, picked the call that his girlfriend Monique called and said he's passed out or whatever it is. Call an ambulance, he said to her. And then after the show, Eric and split. Terry had left, and I was with Judy Wong, a friend of mine, Chinese girl that was living in London. We were just walking around London, just blown away. We just got the news that he had died. On the show itself, when he played, it was amazing. He was standing right next to me. I loved the fact he knew my name. He said, "Am I doing?" He actually asked me, "Am I doing okay, Lee?" Even though it was Lee.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he wasn't in the greatest shape, but he knew who I was, because I'd sat in with him a year before with Eric and that in California. Right. But anyhow, he played, instead of my solo, he did his solo. So Howard Scott, the guitar player, played a solo.
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix played. What I didn't like was that while they were playing, it was amazing. Even though maybe he wasn't in his 100%. Hendrix, it was fantastic, right?
Right.
There's the people in the audience who represent Liberty Records, who Eric Burton and War was going to have to deal with.
Yep.
And they were like rooting for Howard, like it's like a game, like rooting for Howard, and almost like putting down because Hendrix wasn't playing as great as that kind of shit I hate.
Yeah,
that ain't about music.
No.
That's one thing I remember, and the other was that there was a kid in front of me who right in front of me, and Terry McVeigh confiscated the tape. He had recorded a reel-to-reel tape of the whole night.
Right.
And I found finally a cassette that somebody kind of remastered. It's not that great a quality. It's terrible, actually.
Right.
But for prosperity, I have a recording of the last time Jimi Hendrix.
That's interesting because there's just been a Joni Mitchell archive box set come out, and there's a live concert of Joni that Jimi Hendrix recorded. He came to one of her shows with a reel-to-reel, sat there and recorded her.
I love it.
So there you go. You know?
yeah, I love it. Love it.
Man. Well, we could talk forever.
Yeah, man. And I've Karen Leipziger spoke very highly about you too.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for doing this. Come down to New Zealand when you get a chance.
I hear it's beautiful there, and I've never been there, of course, and I would love to go there.
Yeah, and good luck with the record. I hope it does well. I mean, it's very ambitious and very powerful. So thank you for making it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Bye-bye.